Brandon Staley is as good as gone in LA. And here's why I think the Chargers will move on from their head coach sooner rather than later. Listen, the Chargers, they lost another one tonight to the Baltimore Ravens, and no shame in that necessarily. The Baltimore Ravens are a very good football team. They sit here at the top of the AFC at 9-3 after the win tonight, going into their bye week. Quality win for them. I think that's comfortable to say. They didn't necessarily get threatened. I mean, I know it was within one score, but then they took the touchdown to make it, 9-10 point game. And they handled business. The Ravens are a good football team, in my opinion. As long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, the pieces stay healthy. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen are an elite linebacker duo. I think they have the players, the talent to go far, the coaching, certainly. They're one of the top teams in the AFC. I think it's between them and the Chiefs. And then you start the next tier, whether that's the Dolphins or the Jaguars or whoever else. And then, of course, there's the top of the NFC that I think is just as good: the Eagles, the Lions, the Cowboys, the 49ers, etc. Nonetheless, just removing ourselves from the game tonight, the Chargers did lose it, and they dropped to 4-7. They're a team that's now fourth in the AFC West, behind the Raiders, who fired their head coach and offensive coordinator this year, and their GM. Behind a team in the Bengals who lost their starting quarterback, behind a team in the Bills who are having one of the worst seasons in terms of expectation versus result, are behind the Broncos, who have made a miraculous turnaround, but were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. And I could go on: the Texans, the Colts, the Browns, the Steelers, right? All teams that they have the talent to be around or better than. They're currently tied with the Titans and the Jets at 4-7. The Jets, who they beat the crap out of just a few weeks ago, a team that lost their starting quarterback and never ended up getting a competent backup quarterback, and are starting Tim Boyle, who had more interceptions than touchdowns in his college career. In his college career, those Jets, they're tied with those Jets and the Tennessee Titans, who are kind of rebuilding, kind of retooling with Will Levis, a rookie starter at the quarterback position. They're tied for 13th, 14th, and 15th in the AFC. 2 games ahead of the New England Patriots at 16th in the AFC. There is only one team worse in the AFC than the LA Chargers in terms of record. Only one team worse. That's incredible. When you consider the amount of talent the Chargers have, it starts at the quarterback position. There's been a few years now of Justin Herbert continuing to play well, but not good enough, right? That's kind of the sentiment. There was obviously a lot of hype around him after his rookie season. There were thoughts and ideas floated out there in the media that Justin Herbert might be the most valuable quarterback at the moment because Patrick Mahomes was, I can't remember if he was going to be paid or he was had just gotten his big contract, his $500 million contract. And that Justin Herbert, being on a rookie deal after his first year, looked like he was the guy, that he has a lightning arm, right? That he was going to, pun intended, lightning Chargers, lightning bolt, that he was going to be the most valuable asset at the quarterback position in the NFL. And we fast forward a few years, and they're in the playoffs last year. They end up facing those Jacksonville Jaguars in the wild card round, and the famous story, they were ahead, let me see, what was it, 27-7 at halftime, and they end up losing that game 30-31. And it's in a coaching job. That's what cost them the game. Similar to the Super Bowl between the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots, where Kyle Shanahan got a little too complacent and tried to run out the clock and didn't try to slice the Patriots' throat, step on their neck, whatever you want to say, when he had the significant lead, and they end up blowing that huge lead to the Patriots and Tom Brady and the comeback and yada, yada. Similar to that, the Chargers blew a historic lead last year in a game that looked to be over because it felt like they didn't know how to put their foot on the throat of the Jaguars, and the Jaguars end up coming back, and credit to Coach Peterson and Trevor Lawrence and the entire Jaguars team for having the resilience and the wherewithal and the coaching adjustments to really come back in that game. But that's kind of the best culmination we could say of Brandon Staley's time in LA. That's kind of the epitome. And so after a season that was somewhat successful last year, they make the playoffs for the first time in a little while. I believe since Phillip Rivers was their quarterback. They end up fizzling out in the first round. They come in this year, and Things don't start off necessarily so well. They lose to the Dolphins in week 1. Okay, the Dolphins are a good team. They lose to the Chargers in week 2. I'm sorry, they lose to the Titans in week 2. And now the Titans are tied with them. Titans are not a good team. They squeak out a win over the Vikings, beat the Raiders. That was of course, the Josh McDaniels Raiders. Lose to the Cowboys, whatever. The Cowboys are a good team. Lose to the Chiefs, okay, whatever. The Chiefs are a good team. You blow out the Bears. You blow out the Jets. Starting to gain momentum. Lose a heartbreaker to the Lions. Then you lose to the Packers. And that one really hurts. And now you've lost 20-10 to the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. And questions are starting to mount. And we're looking at a few games upcoming here. We have the Patriots in Foxborough. That should be a win. If that's not a win, Brandon Staley's fired the next day. I'm calling it right now. If the Chargers go into New England and lose to the Patriots, who are actively trying to lose. If you saw the game versus the Giants today, they're actively trying to lose. They're trying for Caleb Williams or Drake May or whatever quarterback's going to be at the top of their board, Penix or Nix or who else? Shadur Sanders. They're going for that quarterback position. They're going for that top pick in the draft, and it'll be difficult to pry that away from Chicago, considering how bad Carolina's being. But nonetheless, the Patriots are trying to lose. If the Chargers lose to the Patriots on Sunday, Brandon Staley will not have a job by Tuesday. You heard it here first. Calling it right now. Next, they go in an afternoon game against the Broncos in LA. Broncos have been a tough opponent. Winners of 5 straight, the longest active streak in the NFL. The Broncos have been decent. And as someone who criticized, I shouldn't say criticized. I was skeptical of the hiring of Sean Payton. That seems to have really worked out. Someone who thought Russell Wilson's career was done. That seems to be gaining a little bit of momentum here. The Broncos look like they're not a bad team. And then they play the Raiders in Vegas. That's a Sunday night game or Thursday night game? Thursday night game. Then they play. So they visit the Raiders on a short week after facing the Broncos. Not a far travel distance from LA to Las Vegas, but whatever. Then they face the Bills. They're going to lose that game. Calling it right now. They face the Broncos again, this time in Denver. Odds are they're losing that game. And then the last week they're playing the Chiefs. I'd be curious to see if the Chiefs need that game, given how strong the Ravens have been. I'm guessing they need that game for the number 1 seed. Of course, this year and last year with 7 playoff teams in each conference. Only one team is getting the bye. So in each conference, of course. So the first seed is as important as ever. Kansas City routinely goes for that. I have a feeling they're going to need that game. So we're looking at 5 games here. 6 games, I'm sorry. If the Chargers go 3-3, which I think is nice to them, like let's say they win one of the Broncos games. Let's say they beat the Raiders. Let's say they beat the Patriots. So they lose the other Broncos game, lose to the Bills, who are going to need that game to try to get into the playoffs, and lose to the Chiefs. They're looking at a 7-9 season. Oh, I'm sorry, 17 games. 17 games. They're looking at a 7-10 season. Even if let's say they do really well. Let's say they beat the Patriots. They split with the Broncos. They beat the Raiders. They beat the Bills. They beat the Chiefs. 5-1. They're looking at a 9-8 season. 9-8. The LA Chargers that last year made the playoffs and last year showed some strides, that have a quarterback who was widely regarded to be the best asset to the position in the NFL at his current contract. And don't get me wrong, he's a very, very good quarterback. Borderline top of the line quarterback, right? I think that there's Patrick Mahomes and everyone else, in my opinion. And everyone else, that tier after, includes Joe Burrow, includes Jalen Hurts, includes Josh Allen, his recent struggles aside, probably includes Lamar Jackson. CJ Stroud might be forcing him into that category, himself into that category, should I say. That next tier, that's where Justin Herbert is. That's where guys like Dak Prescott are. That's where guys probably like Aaron Rodgers are, if I'm being completely transparent as a Jets fan. Guys like Kirk Cousins. I think they're right there. Justin Herbert is right at the top of that tier. Him and Dak Prescott, right at the top of that tier. They're not Joe Burrow. They're not Josh Allen. They're not Jalen Hurts. They're not Patrick Mahomes. But they're a very, very good quarterback. A franchise quarterback you'd want to build around. You could liken it to in the days of when I grew up on football, he's the Phillip Rivers. We're using the same team, but he's the Phillip Rivers, right? He's not the Peyton Manning. He's not the Tom Brady, but he's a very good quarterback. And he's on a team that has very good players, enough to win, right? We talk about Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and the impact players on that defense. Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. I mean, the receivers are I mean, we're going to ignore the poor draft pick last year, but for the most part, the receivers are good. They have the pieces there. The offensive line is solid, in my opinion. They have the pieces there, and most importantly, they have the piece there at quarterback. What they don't have is a head coach, and we saw it last year in that playoff game. He got outcoached. He's gotten out and coached throughout multiple times this season, and at some point, not only is the front office going to lose patience with him, the locker room's going to lose patience with him. And take it from me as a Jets fan who last year saw my team start Zach Wilson week in and week out and say, he's almost there, he's almost there, he's almost there. He's right there for a breakout. And they started to lose the locker room. And what did Robert Saleh do? Mike White, here you go, you're starting. That's it. Zach Wilson went to third string behind guys like Chris Streveler and Joe Flacco. The locker room having respect for you is what's most important. I mean, we talked about the Raiders. That's the key to the Raiders season. Earlier this season, they were playing for Josh McDaniels, and not a single one of them in there respected him. Not a single player respected him. And Jimmy Garoppolo probably didn't have their respect either. As soon as they switched that, Antonio Pierce, Aiden O'Connell, the vibes are high. Post-game cigarettes, victory cigars, rather, not cigarettes, victory cigars in the locker rooms. Antonio Pierce had his guys there. X's and O's aside, that's obviously a big part of coaching. A lot of coaching is getting the respect, maintaining the culture, and getting that winning atmosphere from every single one of your players. I don't care how patient the GM is. I don't care how patient the ownership is. Once you start losing the guys in that locker room, you're done. And so, like I said, I don't think they'll lose to the Patriots. But if they lose to the Broncos, and heaven forbid they lose to the Broncos and then the Raiders, there's no way in the world Brandon Staley's surviving this. I think he's a good coordinator. Not every good coordinator is a good head coach. We see that with Josh McDaniels, although we talked about him. I know we talked about him in several points in this video, but Josh McDaniels, excellent offensive coordinator in New England, comes a head coach, whether it was Denver, whether it was Vegas, he was never meant to be a head coach. And he'll probably go back to New England and be their offensive coordinator and be pretty good at it with Caleb Williams or Drake May or whoever they pick early on. Not every good coordinator is a good head coach, and I think we're seeing that with Brandon Staley. I know we're seeing that with Brandon Staley, and I never like to call for someone's job, but at the end of the day, if the Chargers want to improve and move on, I think the right decision is moving on from Brandon Staley, and I could see that happening sooner rather than later. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Brandon Staley is long for the Chargers job? What do you think of the Chargers' performance this year? Where did you have them projected? I had them right on the borderline of a playoff team. I had them right around the 8th seed. I thought the Jets were going to be a wild card. Maybe that's my homer pick. And then either the Ravens or the Bengals. And then I forgot who else I had. I might have had Miami as that other wild card team. So I had the Chargers just outside, and then I had the Bills winning that division. I had the Chargers just outside, but I don't know. Let me know what you think, where you had them at the beginning of the season, how far off they were, and what you think their season is going to look like. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching this Quick Thoughts episode. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.